Hello and welcome to Diverse and Inclusive Leaders podcast, the show where I interview the most inspirational and thought-provoking thought leaders of today and unearth their unique stories of diversity and inclusion to help inspire, educate and motivate others to make the world a better place. Today, I'm delighted to be joined not only by a fantastic business leader, but also by a very dear friend of mine, the wonderful Massimiliano Moneta. Massimiliano, or rather Max, as I like to call him, which I will do throughout this podcast, is currently Managing Director for Vion Food Group. Max has had a fantastically colourful career working and living in many different countries all around the world. He has over 2 decades worth of leadership experience within the FMCG, B2B, B2C arena within the food, chemicals, ingredients and value-added solutions area of expertise, including bakery, pastry, beverage and also pharma. Max has a very, very driven business development and commercial personality. He's an expert within the business turnaround arena, marketing, sales across the board from EMEA to North America and also Europe. He's multilingual with broad achievements that include everything from value creation, turnaround, profit maximization, and entry into new and challenging markets. His profile, in his own words, and also in mine as well, is that he makes chaos look simple. He's got a very strategic business mind and he turns knowledge into know-how and really does encourage risk-taking and learning and development, as well as really fostering that strong company development and ethos. Welcome to the show today, Max.
Hello, Leila. How are you?
I'm very, very well, thank you. Thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it and would really, really love, just for all of our listeners who are tuning in today, if you could just tell us a little bit about what you've been up to recently and some of the current projects that you're working on at the moment.
Yes, as you may know, I joined Vion Food a few months ago, taking the responsibility for the Italian market. Actually, it's the biggest market after the domestic one in Netherlands and Germany. That's a lovely challenge. The market, as you may know, in meat is not the most attractive one at the moment. Few trends against the consumption of meat, but still a very interesting market full of opportunity. Italy is the country of meat.
and the country of culture as well, because that's where you were born, that is your heritage, even though you've traveled all around the world.
You see, I had the chance to be Italian, but not living in Italy for a while. So especially when we will move to diversity, that's quite interesting history for me. Because as you may know, family in Italy and in all Latin countries, it's such a strong subject. And despite all the common knowledge, woman and diversity is part of our culture.
Fantastic. And you know, I would love to delve deeper into some of the pieces around Italian culture and some of the pieces around all the different countries that you've lived and worked in, and perhaps some of the differentials between some of the things you've noticed between those different cultures and those different working styles. But before all of that, I'd really love to dig a little bit deeper into your background, because obviously, Max, you've got a fantastic profile now. You know, you're managing director, you've had a huge amount of leadership experience, but I'm really intrigued to find out about the young Max and the Max that has, you know, gone along his career journey, really been resilient, really developed and progressed up the ranks very, very quickly, as you have, up until the point that you are now at today. So talk to me a little bit and tell our listeners a little bit about, you know, your career journey. You know, where did it all start for you? Did you envisage yourself being in this position, you know, maybe 10, 20 years ago? You know, how did that start? How did you be, you know, inspired and motivated almost to embark on a career within business management, leadership, and also within the food industry?
I will tell you a secret. My big secret is curiosity. In fact, yes, the career plan was planned, but if you may think that my degree at the Bocconi University was about small and middle-sized enterprise in Italy, My first job experience was in Kestrel British Petroleum. That is not exactly the smallest one. So, as you may see, curiosity has driven all my business life, and not only business, because as you may know, I'm married with a Caribbean lady, living in Rome, now moving to Milan, and what's next? We don't know. To make it short and as much humble as I could, curiosity was main driver. Actually, I started my career in marketing because I do want to know people. That was really my big question: what people want, what do they think? And then, maybe it's the profile. I moved to sales, and the first experience was in a fantastic country called Switzerland, again in Geneva, working for fragrances. As you mentioned, food is my passion. I'm Italian, so Italy is the country of food. So somehow I was looking for opportunity over there. And B2B was the most nice business you can find because this is how we make food for our children. This is how we make food for our families. This is the food that we eat every day. So the journey started basically like this in Italy for a short period again in Switzerland, then in Middle East, as you may know, in Abu Dhabi. And what you can perceive is that at the end, there are no differences between cultures. And I want to provide you a very nice example. During my first year in British Petroleum, they asked me to attend an intercultural training based in UK, next to London. First thing you may know about Italians is that they are very creative. We have fashion designer, we have designer, and so on. But when you look at the history, the last 20 years, the most famous designer came from Germany. Wow, you would not expect it. The most and the biggest civil law, believe it or not, is not in UK, is not in Germany, is in Italy. So what I've learned during the years is that there are many, many common cultural thinking that are not true. People is the same around the world. We all have families. We are all thinking about be a good man, be a good woman for the future of our culture. So that's in short what has driven my career plan. I want to see something different. I want to see something that I cannot get in the place I am. And today I'm in Switzerland, next to Italian border, managing meat, our fantastic pork and cow and beef and cattle.
That's so interesting. And, it seems to me, Max, and obviously I'm very lucky because I've known you now for many years and I see and hear your vibrant personality and your general zest for life, which I think is brilliant. Have you always had that? Do you think that that has come from your Italian roots? Or, what about your family, your mother, your father? Did they inspire you to really kind of reach for the stars and go and travel everywhere and try out lots of new things? Did your parents work within this area? And, were there any specific milestones within your career that you think made you embark on this journey specifically?
Thanks for the questions. I have two specific examples. I came from a very humble family. Actually, my parents has to made a big effort to pay my last years of university. Bocconi at the time being was very expensive. So what I learned from my father is do not complain too much, work hard and take care of your family. And to be honest, that is what I've tried to do in the last year. While I was working in BP as a stagiaire, I was as well ending my university and helping people to pass their exam at the university. It was very hard, but was a very good lesson. The second one is I'm particularly happy and lucky, maybe. All the CEO, MD, and vice president I've been working with are a great example of leadership. And to be honest, who is Max today? Is a collage, is a puzzle of all the leadership I've been working with. You can learn all the time, being yourself, but try to get the best from the people. And I'm still in touch with all of them. And it's funny enough because sometimes, we are getting old, so we try to remember the past days. And I always say thank you, because from the small detail, I learn what a good and a nice leader should be. So that's in short the history of my leadership.
I really love how you bring things back to family all the time. What your father said, that resonates such a lot with me. Work hard and really cherish your family ultimately. And I guess, it must be quite hard as well because you're working so hard, you're traveling an awful lot, making sure that family still stays central as a core focus when you are, a traveling businessman. How do you manage to balance that juxtaposition between the two? Because for many leaders that I speak with, it's very difficult for them to have a good balance between their personal life and also their business life. And clearly you do that well. I know you talk a lot about Tiago, which is, you have your younger self, which is wonderful. And of course your wife as well, who are home in Switzerland and they follow you wherever you go. That's, it's quite a tough piece. I would love to talk a little bit more about, how one can balance work life and personal life and how you can make a success of both, really.
Yeah, it's a very good question. When you're young, you think that family and business must be separate. With the time, you understand they are just complementary. I do talk a lot about my family during the business. My family knows everything. I should not say that about my and they support me. And what happens is that somehow, vice versa, your colleagues helps you in the family stuff. So it's a commune and a commuting opportunity to share experience. At the end, Leila, I was particularly happy to discuss about diversity and inclusion because, again, this kind of background came from a different experience and different countries. In Middle East, you cannot talk about business if you don't get in touch with families. It's impossible. In Italy, before you start a meeting in the south of the country, you usually take 2 hours coffee and you discuss about family. So, as you may see, family and business are extremely complementary. And actually, I think family is a good balance for business life nowadays.
That's so interesting. And I love that Italians take a couple of hours to maybe talk about business over coffee. And it's interesting because on the one side, and you're completely right with this, people are the same all around the world. We're all blood and flesh, and we all have a beating heart and a soul and everything like this. And so if you strip away everything else, actually, we are all human beings. And so actually, we have lots and lots of similarities. But then at the same time, what you're describing is a lot of different cultural idiosyncrasies almost that exist across the different borders, from Italians that take 2 hours over coffee to the British who arguably, I think, can be very polite and, often politically correct. The Americans almost, who often want to get straight to business. What are some of the differences in cultures that you've experienced throughout your career and through the different countries that you've worked in?
It's a very good question again, because it's funny enough. I mean, you may think that, English like to plan. It is true until a certain level. From my experience, Italian want to see long-term plan. And you may see that English, for example, are extremely good in execution, but if the time is long enough. Italian likes crisis management. This is where we really are top, but we don't like relaxed time. But at the end, again, diversity is key. In my current experience, for example, we have like 16 people in the office. Half of them are women. And we have represented 4 nationalities. We try to get the 5th one. That's very important because what happened is that during the discussion, we can easily perceive how culture influences the decision and sometimes how you can be wrong. So key, once again, is keep an humble profile. Try to listen as much as you could. And I have to say, it remembered me, the university time, Leila. That's funny enough. The most successful students were women. And if you look at statistics in Italy, 75% of the people that get the highest degree are female.
Really?
Now, what happened in Italy? Yeah, 75%. Wow. But what is funny enough, I had a chat with a recruiter a couple of weeks ago in Milan. And they were quite, impressed by the style because they said, first time that an Italian manager doesn't ask me, to get just a male or male from a certain area of Italy. And they said, that's just crazy, because if you think that 70% of the top students are female, and if you decide that you don't want to get female, you automatically exclude from the business the best talent you can find in the market. Now, what I see, Leila, just to come back to our discussion, is that some countries more advanced, some other countries a little bit behind, but it's coming. Especially I have to admit in the Latin countries, this kind of diversity is not yet there fully. And I give you an example. In France, in Italy, in Spain, but not only, we discuss about pink quote, meaning the number of women that you should have in a certain organization. Now, in 2019, the fact that you need to express that the balance should be written is just insane. Today, we live a world where we try to build barrier, but we should remember that it's just one world, and we can only benefit from each other.
Absolutely.
That is the best.
Absolutely. And what you're describing there is that diversity of mindset and the fact that everyone should be included, which is really the most critical piece of the two words, diversity and inclusion. Yes, they're often lumped together, but really including everyone. And it's really surprising that this recruiter that called you up said, oh, usually it would be a request for a male from a specific area, and that you are being broad and saying, look, I don't mind who or what or where they are from, include all the females you like, because they generally have, in Italy, according to statistics, had 75%, the highest degree marks that there are out there. And it's interesting that things like this are still happening. And, with my headhunting hat on, which of course is, maybe 50% of what I do still these days at exec level, well, often you do have these slightly obscure requests when really, if you were to take the names off all the CVs and if you were to take away any notes which might give rise to, well, give an example of where they're from or allude to which country they're from, which nationality, etc. If you took all of that away and you just looked at the skills purely, I wonder what would happen. I bet that there would be a far greater pool of diverse talent than there might otherwise have been. And, whilst we're talking about the subject of diversity and inclusion, and of course the podcast show is called Diverse and Inclusive Leaders, what does diversity and inclusion actually mean to you, Max?
It's both sides. If you think that I'm Italian and I've been requested to move to Middle East because of my skills, and that was an interesting discussion because nobody really cares about the fact that I was Italian, if not because I make a very good coffee, but they're really interested on my skills, and especially on the way we communicate, on the way we execute during crisis management. And that showed me that one day or the other, you will be on the other side. So you should think seriously about what you want to get from people. Are you really interested on who they are in terms of nationality? My child is 5 years old. He speaks 3 languages, Spanish, Italian, and English. He's born from a Cuban lady living in Rome, then in Switzerland, then in Milan. I tried to explain him what borders are. He was laughing. He didn't understand at all. So we live not the future, we live the present. In 2019, diversity is a must. And the fact that we should talk about just tell me that still is a culture that is not yet 100% in all the mind. So I think this is our mission, Leila. Diversity must be part of our daily life. And not only from a personal point of view. Statistics shows that companies that has the highest grade of diversity are the most profitable one.
Absolutely.
So there is also an interest as a shareholders to invest in diversity. That's in short my personal point of view.
I love that. And amen to that completely. I think that all businesses really should have diversity and inclusion at the top of their agenda, because you're very, very right. Statistics show, a lot of the McKinsey studies have shown that actually having a broader spectrum of diversity equals diversity of thought, equals more profit in the long term. you know? And you mentioned Tiago, who is clearly growing up very, very fast. I love your little example there about him not understanding kind of the borders piece. Do you think that there is going to be a significant shift for millennials, of course, zillennials, and even further on, and to Tiago's generations, who will be our future leaders ultimately? Do you think that they will have a different take on the world and different take when it comes to diversity and inclusion? Do you think maybe diversity will just be a given in the future? Or do you think it might still be talked about in the same way that you and I are talking about it today?
I think the answer is already in our schools. And if you have the opportunity to spend a couple of minutes just watching our children, for them, diversity is just a word with no meaning anymore. My Tiago, for example, has 5 different nationalities at school. The way he treats the girls and the men at school are the same. He plays with dolls. For me, it was impossible. My father would kill me. For him, using a car, using a doll, is the same things. He doesn't care if it is a female toy or not. In his mind, it doesn't exist. So I think we are lucky, Leila. The next generation, Tiago 1 and the next coming, I have to say, are better than us. They learn from our mistakes, and they're building a better future for human beings. And I'm particularly proud and happy, meaning that somehow we did a good job.
Absolutely. And I think that's really motivating and inspirational to hear, because I have really positive aspirations for the future generations of leaders. And I think part of that is social media. And part of that is the fact that digital, whilst people do complain that there is constant mobile phones and constant data all the time, on the flip side, it's actually made the world a much smaller place in one way, because actually we can connect with people quite easily across the globe. It feels like you and I are in the same room, and actually you're in Switzerland and I'm in Didsbury, actually in Manchester today. And I think that children and future leaders are seeing this because they're growing up with social media. They're growing up looking at, media and what have you, and seeing that, someone's Italian, Chinese, Japanese, Indian, whatever, actually that they're all together on one platform, on the internet, on socials, LinkedIn, Facebook, etc. I do think it has got a positive part to play, providing we're pushing out the right positive content there for kids and future leaders to learn from.
You see, it remembered me what my grandfather told me. He was writing with a pen and paper. I was thinking last time I used a pen, except to sign checks. It was a long time ago. So you see, technology impact any generation. I think mobiles, I think internet and social media just help us a lot to contribute in terms of diversity, in terms of understanding that there are no borders anymore. And somehow, I have to be honest, I see my Tiago, again, 5 years ago, he can easily turn on my mobile, get his application and play. There's nothing wrong if behind there are the right values about family, about respect, about be humble. So it's a very interesting subject. I would say we are in our teenager generation for high tech. And when you're a teenager, you never know if you do right or wrong. But what I can tell you, there is a lot of hope. I do really think the next generation are building a very nice future for us.
And another couple of questions that I have for you. Obviously, we've touched on diversity and inclusion, and we've also touched on some of the different cultural idiosyncrasies across different countries and your experiences. But you also mentioned your grandfather there, which I thought was lovely. And we talked a lot about family. I'm really keen to know, from your perspective, obviously the family have been a very big influence in your life, both personally and professionally. Who else has really inspired you throughout your career and throughout your personal life? And it can be anyone, business contacts, leaders, former managers. Who's been the most inspirational to you, Max, and why?
I have a very funny example, Leila. I do take aperitif sometime in downtown in Milan. And you have to know that in Italy, there are many people, especially from the poor countries, such as Bangladesh. They are very, very hungry. And they are very, very hungry. that try to sell you small stuff, such as far lighting and so on. And after 14 years, we became friends. These people work hard, they always smile, and they don't see their family for 3 and 4 years. So last week, I was particularly tired, and this man was approaching me. I know him since 14 years. And he told me, Max, I don't see my family and my child since 3 years. And I still smile when you come because you are a nice person. So he told me, do you really think that the business should impact negatively your life? Your family is 10 minutes far by driving. You are full of friends. You love the business you do. You love your job. So that's the kind of also leadership sometimes we need. We forget that being humble and be happy about what we have, it's very important. So ambitious is okay, we must have it, but also recognition of what we have is extremely important. And may look a naive example, but it's full of value.
That's a lovely example. And this guy you mentioned, he works away, is an Indian chap who works locally and spends a lot of time away from his family.
Yeah, they work by street, by the way, Leila. They are poor people.
Street
They
worker.
came in Italy. Yes, street worker. They may think that in Italy they may find an opportunity. Some of them, they are lucky, they found it. But most of them, they just came, try to survive. But they do always with the right attitude.
And attitude is so important. I love that you've chosen your friend who is a street worker out of everyone that you could possibly have chosen. CEOs, other business leaders, you've chosen him. And do you know what? That's just a casing point about humanity. It really is. You know, like you said, being humble, having a smile on your face, making sure that actually you go into every day with enjoyment, because actually even those that financially may not have anywhere near as much as we are fortunate maybe to have, actually still hardworking, still there with a smile on their face, still at their core, really nice people. I love that. I really, really love that.
That's also linked to the background, because I have to say, again, all the CEO, the managing director I've been working with, since the first one in British Petroleum, Cesare White, he told me, try to spend the first 20 minutes of your day with your employee, because they are respectful people. They are waiting for you, to exchange few words. And especially you will know many things that the business will never tell you. So I think you're right. Leadership meaning also set the right example. And we just live in an era where, of course, finance are important. I'm the first one. But somehow we need a balance between finance and value. Also because what I can see, also in the current opportunity and the business-wise, is that consumer and shareholders, they pay a lot of attention now on values. Values are not anymore just few words put in a nice folder or in a nice presentation to make people happy. This is really something the shareholders take care of.
Absolutely. And if you can create that value and if you can create that sense of that feeling where people feel involved and they want to be there and they have an emotional connection with your, whether it's your brand, whether it's a product, service, etc., then that value creation equals greater profit and far more resonates with a more transactional type of business because it's got the human element. What might you say to your younger self if you were going to be imparting some wisdom back on your younger self 10 or 20 years ago? Or it could be to someone who's starting out in their career now and tuning into the podcast today thinking, Max, give me some wisdom because it's really tough out there in the world and I really want to succeed like you.
I think it's keep an humble approach. Look always at the future. There is nothing you can do to change the past. There is nothing you can really impact on the present. But yes, you can drive your future. And usually people try to expose you only to negative side of the future. But the truth is that future is fantastic. Even when you are in trouble, you can see the light. So future is always good for people that deserve it.
Brilliant. And how do you motivate yourself as well? If there's anyone who's listening who's feeling they need some extra motivation, because you have this charm and happiness and abundance that really, really shines through. And every time we meet or I come to Italy and have lunch with you, I always come away with a smile on my face because you've got this vibrant personality. If there's anyone listening who needs to have a spark of wisdom or they need to have some max motivation, what would you say to them?
Motivation is people, to be honest. Okay. I have a nice team. Every time I wake up, even if there are, small problem, and in business life, it's okay. I always think what people expect from me. Do they expect a person that complain? Do they expect a person that came to the office just because he has his routine? No. So I try to find every day something interesting for them. And when I see them happy, when I see them coming to me asking for suggestions, that's the best motivation.
How lovely. And finally, is there anything that you're listening to, any quotes that you find particularly inspirational, any books or podcasts or shows that you've watched recently that you would like to share with our audience that you're reading, say, or listening to at the moment?
The most interesting one is a Leila podcast, of course. So I do suggest.
Max, this is why I love you. That is completely, totally the right answer. I love it. You have it on repeat. So you're listening to the Diverse and Inclusive Leaders podcast. And do you know what, Max? Thank you so much for coming on the show today. I'm going to summarize, just for all of our listeners there, some of the points from today's show. There's certainly been a lot of learnings that I've taken away from Max, which most importantly are hard work and family, and putting family at the core and center of everything that you're doing. And being a nice person. Some of these pieces are really simple, but you know what? They are so true. And if we just embraced one or two pieces of the information that you shared with us today, being humble, being human, being kind, being passionate, trying to find something positive in every day, and also spending some more time with your employees, whether you're a manager or whether you are an employee. Try and spend more time finding out about the people that you're working with or the people that you're leading, because actually really taking the time and the care and attention to get to know someone personally, not just on a business level, can really make such a positive impact within yourself and also within the workplace. So do be humble, have respect, humility, look to the future, be positive, and try and have respect for all the other human beings who are on this planet. So I'll say thank you very much, Max.
Thank you, Leila, and see you soon.
See you soon. My name is Leila Mackenzie, and today you've been listening to Diverse and Inclusive Leaders, the podcast, with you every week. If you'd like to check out any of the notes from today's podcast, or if you'd like to get in touch with myself or Max directly, please do reach out on LinkedIn. I'll put Max's profile there onto the show notes from today's episode so you can get in touch with him, be inspired by him, and I'm sure that he'd be more than happy to come back to you if you'd like a chat or if you'd like to reach out about any management or leadership advice. Visit www.leilamackenzie.com/podcasts. And I will look forward to seeing you all next time. Bye for now. Thank you so much for watching the Diverse and Inclusive Leaders podcast. Please do feel free to hit the like button below, or if you'd like to receive future notifications, do ping the notification bell here at the side. If you're interested in the audio version only, you can find it on the following streaming platforms. Any extra info and descriptions will be in the links below. Look forward to seeing you soon.